The battlefield was silent now. Smoke drifted slowly across broken ground. Metal scraps and burned machines lay scattered everywhere. Once this place had been alive with shouts, fire, and the clash of war. Now it was nothing but ruins. Among the ruins, half buried in dirt and ash, lay a small figure. She was not human. Her skin carried faint patterns that shimmered even under layers of dust. Her hair was tangled and heavy with mud. Her eyes, half open, glowed weakly in the dim light. She breathed slowly, each breath shallow, as if even air was too heavy for her chest. The alien girl had been left behind. Her people had fled when the battle was lost. The wounded were abandoned. The weak were forgotten. She had tried to crawl after them, dragging her body through the broken earth, but her strength had failed. She collapsed face first into the dirt. Hours passed. No one came back. She was sure this was the end. Then she heard footsteps. At first she thought it was the enemy, and fear shook her heart. She closed her eyes, waiting for the final strike. But the steps stopped near her body. A shadow fell over her. It was a man. The human soldier stood tall, his armor scratched and dirty, his rifle hanging loose in one hand. He had been searching the battlefield for supplies, maybe survivors. His eyes caught the faint shimmer of her skin. For a long moment he said nothing. He just stared at her as if trying to decide if she was even alive. The girl's lips trembled. She wanted to speak, to beg for help, but no words came. Her throat was dry, her voice broken. Only a faint sound escaped, more like a sigh than speech. The man knelt beside her. His shadow shielded her from the harsh light. He could see the wounds on her arms, the blood dried against her pale skin. She looked fragile, more like a child than a soldier. "Why are you still here?" he whispered almost to himself. No answer came. Only her weak breathing. He knew what the rules said. She was the enemy. He should leave her. He should report her position. Or worse, end her life before she became a danger. His commanders would call her a threat. His comrades would call him a fool. But he didn't move. His eyes locked on hers, and something inside him refused to turn away. Her eyes were full of pain, but also something else. Not hatred, not anger, only fear and the faintest spark of hope. He remembered his own sister back home. He remembered the day she fell sick, the way she looked at him helpless, hoping someone would save her. He had failed then. He had promised himself he would never fail again. Slowly, the man reached out his hand. The alien girl flinched. She thought he was going to strike her. Instead, his hand pressed against her shoulder, steady and careful. "You're alive," he said quietly. Tears formed in her eyes, mixing with the dirt on her face. For the first time since her people had left her, she felt a touch that was not cruel. The human soldier glanced around. The battlefield was empty, but danger was never far. If someone saw him helping her, he would be questioned. If his unit found out, they might even punish him. Still, something inside him had already made the choice. He slid his rifle across his back, then gently lifted her from the ground. Her body was so light it felt like lifting a child. She gasped weakly, the movement causing pain. But she did not resist. She simply rested her head against his chest, too weak to do anything else. Her skin was cold. Her pulse was faint. He knew she would not last much longer without care. The soldier began walking, his boots crunching against broken stone and metal. Every step carried weight, not just her fragile body, but the weight of his decision. In the distance, fires burned. Above them, dark clouds covered the sky. The alien girl tried to open her mouth, tried to speak to him. A single word formed on her lips, though he did not understand it. It sounded like a plea, a whisper from someone on the edge of death. He looked down at her and spoke softly, though he knew she could not understand his language either. "You're safe now. I won't let you die here." The girl blinked slowly, as if his voice was enough to hold her in the world a little longer. Behind them, the battlefield remained silent. But the story had already begun to change. One human, one alien girl. Both enemies by rule. But fate had tied them together in the dirt of a forgotten war. And from this moment on, neither of their lives would ever be the same. The human soldier carried the alien girl through the ruins, his heart heavy with questions. Every step he took felt louder than the last. The battlefield was empty now, but emptiness was never safe. Patrols could arrive. Drones could scan. And if anyone saw what he was doing, holding an enemy in his arms, he would be marked as a traitor. He tightened his grip on her. She was light, almost weightless, but her presence was heavier than stone. He could feel her shallow breaths against his chest. She was alive, but only barely. The soldier's name was Marcus. He had survived many battles, and he knew the rules. Never help the enemy, never show weakness. But rules did not stop his thoughts. Every time he looked down at her, he remembered the faces of civilians he once could not save. Memories came back like ghosts, people he had left behind because orders told him to. This time he refused to walk away. Yet the risk was clear. His own camp was less than a mile away. If he carried her inside, soldiers would draw their weapons. Officers would demand answers. Maybe they would drag her out, finish her life in front of him. Or worse, they might accuse him of betrayal. The girl stirred in his arms. Her glowing eyes opened slightly. She tried to lift her hand, weak and trembling. She touched his chest plate, leaving a faint streak of blood on the dull metal. Marcus looked down. "Don't worry," he whispered, though he knew she didn't understand. "I won't let them hurt you." But even as he said it, a voice inside him asked, "Can you protect her from your own people?" When he reached the edge of the camp, his steps slowed. The watchtowers loomed above, and 2 guards paced the entrance. They hadn't seen him yet. He stopped behind a broken wall, breathing hard. The girl's head rested against his shoulder, her body shivering. Marcus set her down gently on a piece of broken concrete. She was barely conscious, her lips moving, but no sound escaping. He crouched in front of her, trying to think. He could leave her here, hidden among the ruins. If patrols didn't find her, maybe she could survive until night. But her wounds were bad, too bad. Without medicine, she wouldn't last long, or he could sneak her in. It was madness. But if he carried her through, maybe he could hide her in his tent, treat her wounds, keep her out of sight. It was a dangerous plan, but it was the only way to keep her alive. The sound of footsteps broke his thoughts. A group of soldiers was returning from patrol, laughing, their rifles slung across their backs. Marcus's heart pounded. If they came this way, they would see her. He had seconds to act. He looked at the girl. Her half-closed eyes met his. There was no strength in her body, but there was trust in her gaze. Somehow she already knew he would not abandon her. Marcus clenched his jaw. "Fine," he muttered. "We're doing this." He pulled his cloak from his pack and wrapped it around her, covering her alien features. Her faint glow dimmed under the fabric. Then, without hesitation, he lifted her again and started walking straight toward the camp. The guards at the gate looked at him, puzzled. One raised an eyebrow. "Another casualty?" the guard asked. Marcus nodded quickly. "Yeah, found her near the ridge. Poor thing's in bad shape." The guard leaned closer, trying to peek under the cloak. Marcus shifted his arm, blocking the view. "She's half dead," he said sharply. "Don't waste time. I'll take her to the med tent myself." The guard hesitated, then shrugged. "Fine, just hurry." Marcus walked past them, his pulse racing. Every second felt like a knife pressed against his throat. But somehow luck or fate led him through. Inside the camp, fires burned in barrels. Soldiers cleaned their weapons, ate rations, or argued over cards. Nobody paid much attention as Marcus carried the cloaked figure across the camp. Still, he kept his head down, his steps steady, forcing himself not to rush. Finally, he reached his tent. He pushed inside, placed her carefully on his bedroll, and pulled the cloak away. Her face was pale, her breathing faint. He knelt beside her, pulling out the small medical kit he always carried. "This is crazy," he muttered to himself as he cleaned her wounds. Completely crazy, but his hands did not stop moving. The girl's eyes fluttered open again. For a moment, she looked confused by the tent, the strange objects, the human soldier helping her. Then slowly her lips curved into the smallest smile. It was weak, but it was real. Marcus froze. That tiny smile cut deeper than any wound. It told him everything. She wanted to live. She wanted to trust him. And at that moment, Marcus knew there was no turning back. He had chosen his path. The human would protect the alien girl, even if it meant standing against his own kind. The camp was restless that night. Fires burned low, and the smell of smoke mixed with the sharp scent of oil. Soldiers muttered as they cleaned their rifles, their voices heavy with anger at the last battle. Some cursed the enemy, others cursed the commanders. But one thing united them all: hatred for the alien kind. Inside his tent, Marcus sat beside the alien girl. She lay wrapped in his cloak, her chest rising and falling slowly. Her skin was still pale, but she was alive. He had managed to stop the bleeding and give her water. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep her breathing. Yet Marcus's mind was far from calm. He could already feel the weight of suspicion pressing closer. He knew soldiers noticed things. They noticed when someone carried supplies quietly, when someone entered their tent alone after patrol. It wouldn't be long before questions started. A sound outside froze him. Heavy boots stopped at his tent flap. "Marcus," a rough voice called. He swallowed hard before answering. "What is it?" The flap opened and Corporal Jennings stepped inside. A broad man with a scar across his jaw, Jennings was known for being sharp-eyed and quick to doubt. His gaze swept the tent in an instant. "You've been gone longer than the others," Jennings said slowly. "Found something out there?" Marcus forced a steady expression. "Scrap metal. Nothing useful." Jennings narrowed his eyes. His gaze lingered on the corner where the cloak hid the girl's body. "Strange," he muttered. "Because I thought I saw you carrying someone." Marcus's heart thudded, but he didn't move. "You must have been mistaken." Jennings stepped closer, his boots grinding into the dirt floor. "Mistaken? I don't think so. Tell me, Marcus, you didn't bring back one of them, did you?" The word dripped with venom. Them. Enemy. Monster. Unworthy of pity. For a long moment, silence filled the tent. The girl stirred slightly under the cloak and Marcus's pulse spiked. He shifted his foot, blocking Jennings's view. "No," Marcus said firmly. "I'd never risk that." Jennings studied his face, searching for cracks. At last he smirked. "If you say so. Just remember, Marcus, anyone caught helping the enemy won't live to regret it." He left without another word. Marcus exhaled slowly, his hands trembling. The danger was real now. Suspicion was growing. If Jennings spread doubts, others would listen. Later, when the camp quieted, the alien girl opened her eyes. She looked at Marcus, confusion and fear swimming in her gaze. She had heard the soldier's voice, the anger in his tone. She didn't need to know the words to understand. Marcus leaned close, whispering softly, "Don't worry. I won't let them find you." She blinked slowly, as if trying to believe. Then weakly, she raised her hand and pointed at herself. After a pause, she touched her chest again, whispering a faint word in her language. Marcus frowned. Was she telling him her name? He repeated the sound awkwardly. Her lips twitched into the faintest smile. For a moment, something gentle filled the tent. A fragile connection. Two enemies sharing the smallest piece of trust. But outside, voices grew louder. By morning, whispers spread through the camp. Soldiers said someone had been hiding something. Others said they had seen Marcus carrying a strange figure under a cloak. When Marcus walked out to fetch water, eyes followed him. Some narrowed in suspicion, others in curiosity. "Hey, Marcus," one soldier called mockingly. "Find yourself a pet out there?" Laughter followed, but it carried a sharp edge. Marcus ignored them and kept walking, but inside his blood boiled. They were already circling him like wolves. He returned quickly to the tent. The girl's eyes widened at the look on his face. She touched his hand gently, as if sensing his fear. "They don't trust me anymore," Marcus admitted softly. "And if they discover you, they'll kill us both." The girl didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. She pressed her small, trembling hand against his, her faint glow warming his skin. Marcus felt the weight of choice pressing harder. Every moment he kept her alive, he stepped further away from his people. Every lie he told built a wall between him and his comrades. But when he looked into her glowing eyes, he knew his decision hadn't changed. He would risk everything. That night, Jennings returned with 2 more soldiers. Their shadows filled the tent. "We've had enough," Jennings said coldly. "You're hiding something, Marcus. And tonight we find out what." The soldiers stepped forward. Marcus's body tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward his rifle. The girl's weak gasp broke the silence. The cloak slipped slightly, revealing a glimpse of her shimmering skin. Jennings' eyes widened with triumph. "I knew it," he hissed. "You brought an alien into this camp." Marcus raised his weapon, his voice sharp as steel. "Stay back." For the first time, his fellow soldiers looked at him not as a comrade, but as a traitor. Shadows of distrust had become blades of danger. And in that moment, Marcus realized his secret was no longer safe. His protection of the alien girl had become a war inside the war. The night was tense after Jennings stormed out of Marcus's tent. He had not fired his rifle, but the look in his eyes was enough. Marcus's secret would not remain secret for long. Marcus sat in the corner of his tent, his weapon leaning against the wall, his hands pressed hard against his face. He could hear the muffled coughs of the alien girl as she lay wrapped in his cloak. Every sound reminded him how fragile she was, and how fragile his choice had become. Outside, soldiers whispered in groups. Shadows moved past his tent. He knew they were watching. One mistake, one sound too loud, and they would storm inside. Marcus looked at the girl. She blinked weakly, her glowing eyes reflecting the dim light of the lantern. She looked afraid, but there was also something else. A strange trust, as if she believed he would keep his promise. He knelt beside her. "I don't know how much longer I can hide you," he said softly, "but I'll try." She didn't understand the words, but she reached out with trembling fingers. She touched his hand gently. Her skin was cool, faintly glowing with patterns that shifted like waves of light. The touch was fragile yet steady. Marcus froze. For a soldier who had only known war, that simple touch carried more power than a weapon. It wasn't just thanks, it was connection. The days that followed were full of danger. Marcus brought her food in secret, carrying extra rations from the mess line. He brought water in his canteen, pretending it was for himself. At first, she only ate in silence, her eyes darting nervously toward the tent flap. But slowly, she began to relax. She watched him with careful curiosity, as if studying the way he moved, the way he spoke. One evening, Marcus tore a strip of cloth and began cleaning her wounds again. She winced at the sting, and he muttered, "Sorry." Her lips moved, repeating the sound. "Sorry." Marcus's eyes widened. She was trying to mimic him. He leaned closer, pointing at himself. "Marcus," the girl tilted her head. "Mark, us." Her voice was faint, broken, but clear enough he almost smiled. Then he pointed at her, waiting. She hesitated, then whispered a word in her language. It was soft, musical, nothing like human speech. "Lyra," Marcus repeated, clumsy with the strange sound. Her eyes lit up faintly. She nodded. For the first time, Marcus knew her name. Every day, the bond grew. They still could not share full words, but small things built meaning. When Marcus handed her food, she tapped her chest softly, whispering "Lyra," as if to say thank you. When he pointed at the sky and said "stars," she repeated the word slowly, her voice trembling but eager. And sometimes, when the camp grew quiet, she would hum. A strange, haunting tune that seemed too delicate for a world of war. Marcus listened, and the tension inside him eased. But shadows of distrust still crept closer. Jennings' words spread like fire. Soldiers looked at Marcus differently now. Some avoided him. Some muttered insults under their breath. One even spat at his feet. Marcus ignored them. But inside he knew. Every step he took with Lyra pushed him further away from his own people. One night, the danger nearly broke through. Marcus returned to his tent with food, only to find the flap half open. His heart stopped. Inside, Lyra sat up weakly, staring at the intruder, Jennings. Jennings grinned darkly. "Knew it. You've been hiding her." Marcus dropped the food and reached for his rifle, but Jennings already had his hand on his pistol. "Don't move, Marcus. You're finished. Both of you." Lyra trembled, her glowing patterns flickering like fading light. For a moment, Marcus thought she might scream. Instead, she raised a weak hand toward him. Not to plead, not to cry, but to steady him. Her eyes locked on his, silently telling him, "Do not give up." That silent bond gave him strength. Marcus raised his voice, sharp and commanding. "If you touch her, Jennings, I swear I'll put you down before you take one step." Jennings's smirk faded. For the first time, he saw not just a comrade, but a man ready to kill his own soldier to protect an alien. The standoff hung heavy. Finally, Jennings lowered his pistol slightly, sneering. "This isn't over, Marcus. They'll know soon enough, and when they do, she dies." He stormed out, leaving silence behind. Marcus knelt by Lyra's side. She was shaking, but when he touched her hand, she squeezed his fingers faintly. Weak as she was still telling him she trusted him. In that moment, Marcus realized something powerful. This wasn't pity anymore. This wasn't just him saving a dying girl. This was loyalty. She was no longer just an enemy to him. She was Lyra, and the bond between them, silent, fragile, but unbreakable, was stronger than the fear of betrayal. From now on, Marcus knew protecting her was not just his choice, it was his purpose. The camp had grown uneasy. Whispers turned to arguments, and suspicion followed Marcus wherever he walked. Jennings' accusations had spread like fire through dry grass. Some soldiers laughed at him behind his back. Others looked at him with open hostility, but Marcus stayed silent. He kept his head down during the day, waiting for the night, waiting for the quiet hours when he could sit with Lyra, check her wounds, and listen to her soft, broken attempts at human words. It was in those silent hours that the bond between them grew strongest, and it was also in those hours that fate decided to strike. The attack came just before dawn. The first sound was a shriek, sharp and metallic, from the sky. Soldiers leapt from their beds as energy blasts rained down. Explosions lit up the camp. The earth shook under fire. "Enemy raid!" someone shouted. Sirens wailed as humans grabbed their rifles and rushed to the barricades. Marcus threw himself up from his bedroll. Lyra sat against the tent wall, her eyes wide with terror as fire lit the night. She knew the sound. It was her people. For a heartbeat, Marcus froze. If the aliens broke through, they would find her. Would they rescue her or kill her for being left behind? He didn't know, but he knew one thing. If the humans discovered her now in the chaos, she would not survive. "Stay down," he ordered, his voice sharp. He pulled the cloak tighter over her glowing skin and rushed out of the tent. The camp was chaos. Beams of light tore through the barricades. Humans shouted orders, firing into the shadows. Alien soldiers stormed forward, their shapes quick and terrifying in the smoke. Jennings appeared beside Marcus, firing his rifle. His eyes burned with fury. "See this, Marcus? They'll wipe us out!" "And you want to save one of them?" Marcus didn't answer. He fired into the dark, but his thoughts were split, half on the battle, half on the fragile life hidden in his tent. The fighting grew closer. Aliens broke through the first line of defense. Marcus's squad fell back toward the tents. Suddenly, a sharp sound cut through the air, a language Marcus didn't understand. Shouted with command, and then, to his horror, he heard an answering voice from inside his tent. Lyra had called out. Marcus's blood froze. He turned, sprinting back even as Jennings shouted, "What was that?" When he burst inside, he found 2 alien raiders standing over Lyra. Their armor gleamed, their weapons raised. Lyra's eyes were wide with desperate fear, but her lips trembled with words Marcus couldn't understand. One raider hissed something in their language. The other lifted his blade. "No," Marcus roared. He fired without thinking. The first alien dropped instantly. The second spun, charging at him, but Marcus tackled him to the ground. They struggled, the alien's strength nearly overwhelming him. At the last second, Marcus pulled his knife and drove it forward. The alien collapsed. Silence filled the tent for a moment, broken only by Lyra's panicked breaths. Her glowing skin flickered in terror. She had not called for rescue, she had called to warn Marcus. She had seen them coming. Marcus's chest heaved as he wiped the blood from his blade. He looked at her, shaken. "You warned me," he whispered. She nodded weakly, her hands trembling. She pointed at him, then touched her own chest as if to say, "I chose you." The battle outside grew fiercer. Jennings' voice echoed through the smoke. "Marcus! Get out here!" He knew Jennings would come soon, and if he saw the dead aliens in Marcus's tent, if he saw Lyra alive, everything would end. Marcus knelt quickly, gripping her hand. "You saved me," he said. "Now I'll save you." He pulled her to her feet. She was weak, but she stood leaning against him. He dragged the 2 alien bodies toward the back of the tent, covering them with canvas. Then he led Lyra out through a gap in the rear, away from the eyes of the soldiers. The camp was collapsing. Humans were retreating. Fires blazed across the barricades. Jennings spotted him through the smoke. His eyes narrowed when he saw the cloaked figure at Marcus's side. "You traitor," Jennings shouted. He raised his rifle. Marcus shoved Lyra behind him. Time slowed as he stared down the barrel of a weapon aimed at his heart. But before Jennings could fire, an explosion ripped through the ground between them, throwing him backward in a cloud of dirt and flame. Marcus pulled Lyra close and stumbled into the shadows of the burning battlefield. For the first time, Marcus realized there was no going back. The humans no longer trusted him. The aliens had nearly killed them both. Only one truth remained. It wasn't about sides anymore. It wasn't about human or alien. It was about survival. About the fragile bond that had made them choose each other in the middle of war. And as Marcus led Lyra away from the burning camp, one thought burned in his mind. The real war is only beginning. The night swallowed Marcus and Lyra as they stumbled away from the burning camp. Smoke rose behind them, carrying the screams of men and the shrieks of alien soldiers. The ground shook with distant explosions, but in the shadows of the forest, only the sound of their ragged breathing remained. Marcus tightened his grip around her shoulders, guiding her between broken trees and sharp rocks. She leaned heavily against him, every step a struggle. He could feel how weak she was, how close her body was to collapsing. When they finally reached a hollow between two cliffs, Marcus lowered her gently to the ground. He scanned the darkness for danger, then lit a small lantern, its glow just enough to reveal her pale face. Lyra's eyes flickered open. Her voice was faint but clear enough to form his name. Arcus. The sound nearly broke him. She was learning. She was fighting to speak even in her weakness. "You need rest," he whispered. "I'll keep watch." But Lyra shook her head weakly. She touched her chest, then pointed at the glowing lines on her skin. They pulsed faintly like veins of light. She began to speak in her own tongue, her voice slow and heavy with pain. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but her expression was desperate, as if she needed him to know. Frustrated, Marcus leaned closer. "I don't understand, Lyra. I want to, but I can't." She struggled, then dragged a line in the dirt with her finger. It was a circle broken at one side. She pressed her glowing hand into the shape. The earth lit faintly under her touch. Marcus's eyes widened. What are you?" For the first time he realized she was not just an ordinary alien girl. The glow in her skin wasn't just decoration. It was power, something alive inside her. Lyra saw the fear in his eyes and shook her head quickly. She pointed at herself, then at him, whispering, "Safe with you." As the night deepened, Marcus pieced together fragments. Through gestures, broken words, and her faint drawings in the dirt, a story began to form. She had not been abandoned because she was weak. She had been abandoned because she was dangerous. Her people had left her behind not as punishment, but as disposal. Marcus stared at her in shock. "They were afraid of you." Lyra lowered her head, her shoulders trembling. A tear slipped down her cheek, glowing faintly like liquid light. She whispered something in her tongue, a word Marcus didn't know, but her pain said enough. They had left her to die because of what she carried inside. And now, Marcus had taken her into his arms. The truth weighed on him like stone. He thought back to the raiders in his tent, the way they had looked at her. There had been no joy in their eyes, no relief of rescue. Only hostility. Her own people wanted her gone. "Lyra," Marcus whispered, his voice unsteady. "You're not just an outcast, are you? You're something they fear." She met his gaze. Her weak hand reached for his. When her fingers touched his skin, the faint glow spread into his palm. Not enough to burn, but enough to warm him. He didn't pull away. Instead, he remembered the moment he first saw her, half buried in the dirt, eyes full of fear, but still holding the smallest spark of hope. He realized now that hope had been for him. Not for her people, not for survival, but for someone who would see her as more than a weapon, more than a curse. The forest was quiet, but Marcus could not rest. He sat with his rifle across his knees, watching the horizon. Lyra leaned against him, her breathing slow, her glow dimming as she drifted into uneasy sleep. He thought about the war, about the lines that had divided humans and aliens. He thought about Jennings and the hate in his eyes. He thought about the commanders who ordered him never to hesitate, never to show mercy. And he thought about the girl beside him, abandoned by her own kind, yet still strong enough to fight for life. A new truth, Marcus muttered to himself. This isn't about sides anymore. It's about her. It's about us. He knew now that keeping her alive was more than an act of pity. It was defiance against both armies. But it was also something deeper, something he couldn't yet name. As dawn broke, painting the sky red, Marcus tightened his grip on his rifle. Lyra stirred, whispering his name again. "Marcus." He looked down at her glowing eyes and answered quietly, "I'm here, always." And for the first time, Marcus didn't feel like a soldier at war. He felt like a protector of something greater, something fragile and powerful at the same time, something worth betraying the world for. The sun rose slowly over the broken land. Smoke from the destroyed camp still drifted in the distance, painting the sky in gray and red. Marcus stood on a ridge, his rifle strapped across his back, his cloak wrapped around Lyra's frail body. They had walked all night. His legs ached, but he did not stop. Lyra leaned against him, her glow faint but steady. Every step she took was a fight, yet she never let go of his arm. For Marcus, the war had already changed. He was no longer fighting for orders, for commanders, or for survival. He was fighting for her, but fate was not finished testing him. By noon, the sound of engines echoed across the valley. Marcus froze. On the far side, a convoy of human vehicles rolled over the ridge. Soldiers in armor marched alongside, their banners sharp against the wind. The main force had arrived. At first, Marcus felt relief. Maybe he and Lyra could hide. Maybe they could slip away unnoticed. But the convoy did not pass by. It stopped. Soldiers fanned out quickly, surrounding the ridge. A familiar voice called out, "Marcus!" It was Jennings. His face was bruised from the night's battle, but his grin was sharp as a blade. "I told them everything. I told them what you're hiding." Marcus's stomach twisted. He looked down at Lyra. She clung to his cloak, her eyes wide with fear. Jennings raised his rifle, pointing straight at her. "Hand her over. Orders are clear. Any alien left alive must be executed, especially this one." Dozens of rifles clicked into position. The air grew heavy with silence. Marcus's commanders stepped forward, their eyes cold. "Sergeant Marcus," one of them barked. "You are charged with treason. Stand down and release the creature." Marcus's heart pounded. He felt the weight of every soldier's gaze. His life, his career, his future. Everything could still be saved if he obeyed. All he had to do was step aside. He looked at Lyra. She was trembling, her glowing skin dimming, as if her body already knew the end was near. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't beg. She just stared at him, silently asking, "Will you abandon me too?" Marcus's chest tightened. In her eyes he saw the truth. She had already been betrayed once, left in the dirt by her own people. If he let go now, she would die believing there was never anyone in the galaxy willing to stand for her. He could not let that happen. Marcus stepped forward, pulling Lyra behind him. His voice rang out sharp and clear. "No, I won't hand her over." A ripple of shock spread through the soldiers. Jennings snarled, "You've lost your mind, Marcus. She's the enemy." Marcus shook his head. "No, she's not the enemy. She's alive. She trusted me, and I won't betray that." The commander's face hardened. "You're choosing an alien over your own people? Over your orders?" Marcus raised his rifle, his finger steady on the trigger. "I'm choosing what's right." For a heartbeat, the valley froze. Dozens of rifles aimed at him, fingers ready to fire. Jennings' eyes burned with fury. Soldiers muttered in disbelief. And then something unexpected happened. Lyra stepped forward. Her legs shook, but she moved beside Marcus, standing tall despite her weakness. Her glowing patterns flared brighter than ever, casting light across the ridge. Gasps echoed through the human ranks. Jennings cursed. "She's dangerous." "Kill her!" But before any shot could fire, Lyra lifted her hand. Her glow spread across the air, forming a shimmering barrier between them and the soldiers. The bullets in their rifles jammed, the barrels glowing faintly with heat. The human staggered back in shock. Marcus turned to her, stunned. "Lyra," her eyes met his. Weak but steady, she whispered one word she had learned. "Safe." Marcus's throat tightened. She wasn't saving herself, she was saving him. The commander shouted again, but Marcus didn't hear. In that moment, he knew his choice was final. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her away from the ridge, running into the wildlands beyond. Soldiers shouted, some gave chase, but the barrier of light held long enough for them to vanish into the forest. As they ran, Marcus felt no fear, no regret. The path ahead was uncertain. His own people had marked him as a traitor. Lyra's people wanted her erased, but none of that mattered. He had made his choice. He would protect her. Not because she was alien, not because she was weak, but because she was herself. And in that truth, Marcus found something stronger than war, stronger than orders, stronger than fear. He found freedom.